Okay, so firstly, good afternoon to our students. Welcome to this event, Careers and the Future of Imaging Engineering. I thought what I would do initially is to just discuss the purpose of the session. So we're joined by, I guess now, a hybrid panel of people from industry and academia, but we know that Ron works a lot with industry as well. The purpose of this event is for you to have a dialogue with members of industry. So for our student body to really sit down and have a productive discussion, dialogue with members of industry. I would really like you to drive this session, to lead it, and to ask the questions that are relevant for you and your future career. I thought I would start by very, very briefly defining how we think about imaging engineering on the program, and then I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves. I think, as you know, we take an extremely broad definition of the term imaging on the program, and indeed that applies from molecules to galaxies in some cases. And I want to reflect a bit on that in the first session when you guys have already prompted some questions about what imaging engineering means in industry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves. So I think maybe if we start online, so Jim, would you like to introduce yourself? What I'd like you to do is give me your name and your role, and maybe a one sentence on what imaging engineering means within your company.
Sure, yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies, I can't be with you in person today. My name's Jim Langridge, and I work for previously what was Micromass UK Limited, which has been Waters Corporation here in Wilmslow in the UK. And my title officially is Senior Director and Critical Program Owner for our HOMS business. And I guess I've been, just by a very brief way of introduction, I've been inside this company for about 32 years, which obviously is an extensive career. And within that time, I've done a variety of different roles in the company, from both applications and scientific roles myself, to leading teams of scientists and engineers, to product development. So we tend to run a cross-functional structure here. So I've run teams and currently run a team at the moment that consists of scientists, engineers, as well as marketing and commercial people that are regionally distributed. So I've got extensive experience in a lot of those domains, and I've done a lot of work with collaborators and people like Ron, for example, a good example, which is why I'm sitting here today, around imaging mass spectrometry. So certainly not looking at galaxies, although we could consider, I guess, galaxies of ions in that case, in terms of, what we look at the molecular scale. So nice to virtually meet you all, and look forward to the discussion today.
That's nice context there in terms of the imaging stuff, Jim. Thank you. Jens, would you like to introduce yourself?
Jens Höhendorf. I'm working for Bruker Datonics, based in Bremen, but acting globally. And I'm with Bruker also 30 years, so it's been a long time. And I started my career in Maastricht. At that time, there was no imaging in 1996-7. And but eventually it got invented, and so I made a lot of engineering paths in my early career, and developed devices, series, and I made it into product development, product launching, all of that, and eventually become accountable and responsible for the research and development in the Datonics division, which then includes ESI sources and other types of mass spectrometers, analyzers, MRMS systems. But since my early days, I'm still kind of tied into Molotov and imaging and I'm always enjoying to come back to the science part. So from the experience, in my role as vice president, I'm looking into a lot of functions, all the way from really the research, the technology, the collaboration part, over the product definition to the product development, and then eventually also there doesn't stop. It really goes into it got to be serviced, it got to be maintained, it got to be economically right, otherwise you can't finance the next generation of research, all the way down to serviceability and making that right. And yeah, with that, I'm very happy here to share my experience.
Yeah, thank you. And then Ron, I guess for the purposes of the video, I think everyone in the room knows who you are. You were instrumental in in starting the program, I think. So please introduce yourself.
One of the things that we started about 10 years ago is the Maastricht Multimodal Molecular Imaging Institute, where we set up a new infrastructure for all kinds of different shapes of imaging, ranging from optical to electron microscopy to mass spectrometry. And we very heavily collaborated with these two gentlemen here with us online today. And as part of that, we also looked into how can we use these technologies for spin-off companies or ideas that have come out of this campus. So really, I see these imaging technologies here as a campus as somewhat of an economic motor, not only for our own science, but also for the region where we start new companies, we set up new collaborations with Jens and with Jim and with many others. But the key to those collaborations and the impact we make with our imaging technologies is you guys. You are a big part of the impact, which is why I think it's so appropriate today that you discuss with us here, well, what is imaging engineering? What will it mean for your career? What do you want? And in part also to help a next generation imaging engineers to take advantage of your experiences. So
yeah, thanks.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna take a bit of a risk now because I've got a list of questions from you all, but I don't want to start with that. I would much rather give you the opportunity to open the questioning. So if anybody has any questions, I'm going to give you the mic and I'd love you to start things off.
Hello, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it, and I'm also happy to be here. Maybe a good starting question is, so one of the selling points of this program was that we need more engineers with imaging background. So I think my question would be, do you recognize that in the industry setting? And if so, what kind of skills, qualities you are looking for when you're looking for imaging engineers?
Yeah, that's a very good one. Actually, at the heart of the program, very good. What people are looking for success comes with depth of expertise. And the expertise not in an exotic site-wide, that can also help. But eventually, if you're talking about imaging solutions and imaging products, you need to really know your stuff. So the expertise and the dedication, the focus on these specific area. There's a wealth of scientific areas out there, but the focus and the bundling of the individual packages for imaging, I think, makes this education so specific and so valuable. And so the depth of expertise is always my number one of the expectations on a company. And the other bit which may be then complement and the skill set is a sense for economy, right? So you can do a lot of things, but what are the things the world needs? Which are the things that makes this cool technology applicable and accessible to pretty much the people who are not as educated and as skilled as you, and to bridge that gap from the really deep depths of expertise to the average biology user, clinical user, is I think what makes this profile so attractive for companies. And this is not, and I may let me add that often if you come from academia or from a university, you are thinking about research and development because that's kind of the heart of what you're doing. But don't underestimate the levers of all the other areas in that. I touched that in my introduction a little bit. There's just envision, because it's typically further out for people, just envision someone needs eventually to bring it to the world, which sounds good in an academic, you talk conferences, but eventually sales, as much as it's not wanted, is a key distribution and a very rewarding part for that. Of course, there's competition out in sales, but sales is really something which needs people who understand the technology and complement it with a sense of economy and also interpersonal skills. Very, very important. Not only in research and development to communicate, but also going out of these companies and bring it really out into the community. I can talk a whole day on it, but I give it a stop over there.
Curious to see what Jim thinks about this.
Yeah,
I think it's a good question, and a lot of Jens's answers are spot on with some of the things that I had here, because I think, fundamentally, and exactly to your point, right, it's at the heart of the course. And to my mind, the core thinking around engineering technological skills are really are vital, are the underpinning of you know, certainly what we do in the industry to develop and do the research and development on technologies. I think there's a couple of other things I would say is that I think problem solving is really, really critical, and it's an area that perhaps is not as well developed in people in general when they enter into industry. So I think, you know, courses which actually get, you know, more practical focused courses I think are really critical. And the other thing I would say is flexibility of thinking. So being, you know, kind of multifunctional in nature is more and more important, because, you know, you generally, even within short periods of time in industry, as in academia, right, you have to be flexible and you have to look at different areas and you have to be kind of able to adapt to a changing landscape around you. So I think those things are really, really critical when industry looks at recruiting people, right, and at you know, the kind of roles that people can do in industry.
Ron, do you want to comment on that?
No, I think both gentlemen touched upon perfectly. I think many of these skills and competences that were mentioned are also at the heart of our program. I'm more interested to see if you recognize in this program the type of skills that Jens and Jim mentioned. So let me fire the question back at you.
No, for sure, and I think has also been nice in the program so far that we don't only focus on one aspect of the images and the engineering, but everything from the like taking the image or taking the picture to actually have a picture in front of you. So there's a lot of problem solving goes there.
It is.
I remember that from a certain practical course.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go for it, Tanya.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for both of you being here. It's really exciting. Now you say a really important quality is to know your stuff, of course. Now this program was created by need from the industry, but accidentally or coincidentally, this program also prepares the students really well to go into a PhD. And then my question to the industry is, how valuable is doing a 4-year PhD before applying for a job into industry?
Well, that's a very good one. Maybe he wants to go first? No? Sure. You?
Jim, take it away.
Yeah, I think it's funny, even in my kind of personal life with colleagues, I get asked that question a lot as to, you know, people are finishing their degree, should they, or they're doing a master's, should they do a PhD? And I think I think quite a straightforward answer from me, right, is if you think you're going to stay in science and technology, I think it's an extremely useful thing to have. You know, why is that the case? I think because it teaches you further discipline around sort of thinking, logical thinking, and fundamentally doing research. I think the more that you stray away from kind of core research and development roles, perhaps the less vital it is. We employ a lot of people that have PhDs. Around about 25% of our workforce has higher degrees, but we also employ a lot of people that don't, and people that have done very well in the company don't have PhDs. So our CEO has a PhD, but obviously a lot of other board members, for example, don't have PhDs. So it really is, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer, but in general, it doesn't do you any harm, especially if you're going to stay in the scientific discipline.
Can I maybe follow up on that, Jim, as a reflective question? So I've stayed in academia for my entire career, right? I've been in since university, and my father always says to me, when am I going to get a proper job? I'm interested about.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it's comfortable here. I'm interested. Is there a ceiling that is hit without a PhD? Or I hear a lot. Academics tell me a lot that you will struggle to get into a position where you are directing your own research if you don't have a PhD, or perhaps managing your own research portfolio. Is that an accurate reflection of industry, or?
I think traditionally it was. Yeah, without a doubt. I think it used to be the case that certainly in larger companies there was a ceiling if you didn't have a PhD. I don't think it's never really been the case in the analytical instrument business. I think generally people are more interested in your capabilities, right, and what you can contribute and how you act versus your educational status. But without a doubt, it doesn't do you any harm. I think it is important to recognise the fact that it is a further qualification, and that people, kind of do have there are a lot of PhD scientists that are employed, and without a doubt, it does teach you further rigour that I think can be useful. But just to finish on, I think it's really interesting. A lot of PhD kind of courses, if you're not careful, and one knows my thoughts on this, we've had quite a lot of discussions.
Yep.
They're training someone to be an academic, and 80% of people that do PhDs don't go into academia. So I'm a big believer in sort of more tailored PhDs that are integrated with industry, so that people, kind of understand not just the skill sets, but I think the environment that they're going to enter into when they come, if they go into an industrial environment.
Yeah, I could pretty much echo that what he said. And my personal, if I'm recruiting people, my personal view on PhD versus non-PhD is it's not mandatory at all. I really look at the person, on the education, but I do realize that if you made a PhD in the area of interest, of course your depth of expertise, your networking, your understanding of trends in this very field is so much better. So if you come with a PhD on a completely different area, it tells me you can work independently, you can do problem solving, you work independently, you can manage your diploma students or bachelor students or something. So that's kind of a little bit of a management skill set already you have shown, and self-organizing, getting things done in a timeline, also facing a challenge of a defense, all of that. So that's kind of all things which is almost like a little practice in having worked before, while a master's is essentially an education in my mind. So that at the top, it's not mandatory. The best laser scientist I have has no PhD, and I wouldn't trade him for anything. So that's really, it's not mandatory. It's really more the experience you have gained, the depths in a way. So you're a little bit more, ideally more valuable in a way that you bring more to the table. That would be my view.
Can I add? I want to ask, actually, you guys, the students, a question, but first I'm going to ask these two gentlemen something that Jim mentioned, which I think is a very interesting concept. And I know that in the UK you have these industry-sponsored PhDs, where you do a PhD where you're part at the university and part at the company, what Jim mentioned. So Jim, you clearly see added value in that, and I can understand why, because you also already can, maybe test out what type of people, what their personalities are, what their level of knowledge is. I'm wondering, Jens, is that the same for you? Would that be something that you would be interested in? Because that could be something that as a country or as an educator or an educational institute, we could start thinking of setting that up. So to you, would that be something where you see added value from a PhD program?
Yeah, yes, we do that. We have like European funded students and which do PhD in specific areas, everything from engineering also to processing and also biology stuff. So that's typically then a European funded. If you pay for a PhD person in an industry, then the companies of course reflect, okay, how much do I have to put in for the academic education versus how much do I get back? Companies look egoistic at all such things. But yes, we do that, but it needs to be a very close match. But we definitely do that, yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting to us. Not only we do it because we can, but we are looking for that. But it really is a specific case. It must make sense, content-wise, financially-wise, availability-wise, all of that.
Yeah, I would just say we've had good success with, co-sponsoring PhDs. But I think also it's to the point you both mentioned there is you kind of, it's a relationship with the company, and it works two ways. So I think we start to understand a little bit about the student and their capabilities, but they also get to learn about an industrial environment, but I think also how the company works. So one of the challenges with any organization, right, even if you look at universities, is that they'll have their own way of, their own tool sets, their own way of kind of processes and procedures. And getting someone used to that is certainly a benefit, I think, because, industrial environments are a little bit stricter than universities in that regard.
Maybe to reflect that question on you guys as students, would that make doing a PhD together with industry more interesting as opposed to a fully academic PhD program? Just curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. You can answer that question as well.
First of all, thank you for being here. It's really interesting for me as well. As after this master's, I am considering doing a PhD, but I'm not really sure if afterwards I want to continue to stay in academia or move on towards industry. So for me, a PhD may be co-sponsored by industry. If the particular company also interests me as well, would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm thinking co-sponsoring is one thing, but I'm also thinking about really interaction and spending some time in the company. I think that would be really added value from my perspective. So if we as a university would fund a PhD position, but have a dialogue with, let's say, either with Jens or with Jim, and say, okay, we have this PhD, can he or she spend, half a year or a year in your company working on a project of joint interest or so those are the type of things that I think could, as you said, Jens, be mutually beneficial, I think. So that's, I'm not so funding is one thing,
but also project related.
Yes.
And that of course would also be interesting because you get more feel for the company, I think, and you also see how it actually works in industry as well, except for just knowing about academia.
Absolutely.
And to add to that, there's a span of PhD works. Really, it can be right in a company, paid by a company for a very specific, maybe product development position, right? Make this thing work. So, for example, but the research and the development is kind of a gray zone. There's other topics where a company would say, it looks interesting, but we really don't know if it works out. So we make a risk of investment assessment. So we say, this is too much of a risk. We would support it to some extent, this project or this topic, but maybe you do your PhD in the university, maybe we sponsor something, but we don't want to really get too deep in it too early. So and the further you are on the, say, very, very visionary part versus on the product part, it really also then depends how you set up the structure. So there's no one size fits all. It's really individually by topics, and it's then negotiated by that. Make sense, or?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I've got from you guys that's on my list, which is kind of related to that, because I was interested by what you were saying about, you started out at the start of the session by talking a lot about economics, right? So how you define research based on financial means. And then you also mentioned there that maybe you're speaking to a university about a project and it doesn't quite align with what you're doing because of economic reasons. Is that really how you define research topics within the industry? So let's say we've got students here who are interested in doing master's internships or PhDs with you guys. Is the defining thing for a research topic all about the money?
I would say to a good extent, yes, because there's only so many. We are a company like Bruker is not a venture capital driven company, right? Where you have 1 out of 10 which works out. We have to earn our money every other year as all of the big players in that. So you have only so much budget available for kind of the moonshots. So that's why the typical setting, at least in my experience, is that you leave the moonshots to the community, which is much more powerful and much wider than a single company, right? And then a company kind of comes in and tries to leverage and use at a to be defined point in time when something is really attractive or something. And if you look on the number of projects, how many of your projects make it into a product? It's, I don't know, it's a percent, it's 10% in that order of magnitude. I believe, and there's no whatsoever criticism in that assessment. It's just, I believe, a very logical and very rational trade-off between research, academia, science versus industrialization and making it available to the community.
Jim, do you want to add anything there?
I would add that we kind of often do a lot of, we would describe it maybe as portfolio management, but I think if you were to plot risk and reward, I think to Jens's point, there's a lot of focus to ensure that the research that we do is on the pathway to something that could be a commercial product. So it doesn't mean to say that it is going to be a commercial product and that we're going to effectively take that to an end point of selling it to customers. But I think it has to be, we don't do a lot of, I would say, blue sky research just for research's sake, for academic interest. It's really, mainly to sort of It was described to me when I first joined the company by the previous managing director a long time ago that he said, we have an R&D department, the small R and big D. It's quite a nice way of putting it, right? That we do research, but actually it's designed obviously so that we can commercialize and make money.
Do you guys want to come in on that? Any other questions?
I would ask a question to you guys. What drives you? What is more attractive? Is research attractive? Is development attractive? What would drive you joining a company and work in a company? And if so, what area of an organization would fit most to your interests?
Well, for me at least personally, I think development, optimizing, like that's really close to my heart. But maybe now a question. You mentioned earlier that you are also looking for people with a lot of knowledge to also maybe help with the sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is also really interesting to be like a specialist of a specialist, knowing everything about an instrument, for example. But how does one wiggle themselves into that position from at least, I don't know, an imaging engineering background, for example?
That's an easy one. I mean, you just apply for these positions. You voice your interest.
Without no sales experience.
No, but and that is, I was anticipating it. That is a discussion I had in many recruiting interviews, because people are, to my surprise, they are afraid, or not afraid of research and development, because that's where I come from. And still, research and development in a company is a little different. It's more focused, more targeted, more deadline driven, much more than in academia. And also the flexibility we were mentioning is absolutely key. But at the same time, I mean, it's for sales. Yeah, you need a little bit of background and there's sales training, but it's no magic. And if you are in people and if you are in discussing, you're right on it, right? I mean, just envision you explain what you do to a fellow colleague or something. A sales case and an instrument setting is essentially not different, right? It's a little bit different. But there's also steps into a sales role if you want to go that route. People call it applications development or applications. This is where you kind of demonstrate the systems, right? And you probably never joined a sales case for a big ticket item, but the way it goes, you go into this organization, they have big demo areas, and then the customer brings their problem, and this demo scientist just explains how their problem can be solved and how good it can be solved. And this is then very, very close to sales. It's actually sales context. And it can be very rewarding. I don't want to pitch it too much. We are in a research, I'm not from research and development, but I believe it's widely overlooked as a career path. That's why I'm kind of want to stress it a little bit.
Maybe I can add one thing on that from a more academic perspective. We don't do anything different. We also have to talk about our science in communities and convince other people that our science really makes a difference forever what they want to research. Okay, what they want to research is something different than what they want to buy, but the process is one-on-one copyable. So these soft skills as problem solving, communication that we pitch within the Master Imaging Engineering, those are at the heart of R&D, but equally well at the heart of sales and customer interactions, I think.
Yeah. So it's not an automatic rejection without background in sales. Nice,
No.
Good to know.
On the contrary.
Yeah, I'd just also add, I think one of the most important things is a bit of kind of connection and passion to what you're doing. And I think that's true of whatever you end up doing in your career. Is you generally spend a lot of time at work, so you better enjoy it. And I think it comes across, right, whether people enjoy their work or not, and whether it's in a sales situation or whether it's fundamentally in research and development. You've got to enjoy what you do, and you've got to be passionate about what you do. And if you do that, you'll get you a long way. I think it's the number one thing we look for in, when we want to fast track people. Why are we fast tracking those people? It's not because their capabilities are necessarily better than anyone else inside the organization. It's generally because of their attitude and their kind of passion and their work ethic. So, if you work hard, generally you're successful in industry, is my kind of opinion on it.
So to Jim's point, I could not agree more, because think of the difference. Here you are sitting in front of somebody who wants to offer you, potentially can offer you a job, and your attitude is, here, I'm here, I need a job, or I'm here because I enjoy what I could do here. The attitude is completely different. The second person, I would love to talk to and I would engage with. The first person, maybe not so much. So very, very true what Jim says, I think. I do the same thing when I recruit PhD students, so no difference there.
It's that age-old thing. Find something you love and get someone to pay you to do it. Right?
Exactly.
That's good advice. I think just to sum up the discussion of that last question, one of the reasons why we're doing this is because what we often find is that there's a bit of a mismatch between what you think you're able to do and what perhaps industry thinks you're able to do, right? And I think that often students don't quite realise the plethora of transferable skills that they are developing as they progress throughout their education, and this is especially true at master's level. Think of all the soft skills that you're developing at the moment, as well as the hardcore stuff. These are all things which are immediately transferable to these workplaces. So I think, yeah. Okay, in the interest of time, I was gonna move on to the next section. So this is the kind of future of imaging, or the future of imaging engineering. I want to look forward now and think about the future a little bit. One of the questions that I posed was in 5 years, what are engineers going to be doing differently today than they are today? And I wonder if maybe Jens or Jim, you can reflect on that a little bit.
Jim,
Yeah, happy.
Go ahead.
Who wants to start? Jens, do you want to start?
No, go ahead, please.
No, I think there's a couple of things I would say. I think if you think about what engineers are going to be doing differently, I think they will be challenged to be, the world is not becoming an easier place, right? It becomes more uncertain, and therefore I think engineers are going to be asked to be more productive, and they're going to be asked to be more, kind of timescales for development cycles, right, and for research are going to become shorter, and therefore research is going to have to be more impactful. And I think probably the biggest change that we're already starting to see is, if you look at, and I hate to use the word, it's an overused kind of area about artificial intelligence, but one of the things that definitely is going to happen, we're already starting to see this in, engineering development circles, is the impact that technology will have should free up, and everyone gets concerned that, well, it's going to take jobs away. Actually, what it should allow you to do is to be more thoughtful in the work that you're doing. So a lot of I hate to say the donkey work, but a lot of that kind of work that isn't particularly glamorous, which everyone has to do in their jobs, you hope starts to get taken away, and therefore people's time can be spent on the areas where I think intellect is and innovation is truly important. So I think engineers are going to be challenged to be more productive and to be more innovative.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the students to come in before I get your reflection on that. I mean, I'm amazed that the term AI hasn't come up yet. So thanks for bringing it in, Jim. We're 45 minutes in, and that's the first time it's come up. So, but I can't imagine what it's like to be in your shoes now, right? There are huge global challenges that need to be solved. Yeah, you've got this revolution in AI. How do you feel about that? What are your worries about what the engineer of the future is going to be required to do?
That's a big question.
It's a big question, but have you got any thoughts on that? Are you worried about artificial intelligence?
Hello. No, I think the first thing that came to my mind, that I have zero background in programming, for example, and I can 100% say that without AI I could not do the projects. Like, that has speed rocketed my learning curve, and I still of course need to, and I'm forced to understand the logic behind it, but I think it's always not only it's not always a problem, I would say, at least AI in my case. But that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, on the rise of AI in programming, I agree, because programming, eventually you're going to hit a wall, can run into issues, and if you don't know yourself, AI is of course a very helpful tool in that regard. And further, I think artificial intelligence of course has its good and its bad sides, as if you don't know anything, for example for programming or other aspects, it can help you a lot to really develop those skills in a really short amount of time. And of course, yeah, the grunt work, the donkey work, of course, it can take away from you as a person, so that would make several things a lot easier. And of course, there are downsides to it, but that's in essence to everything. There's downsides as well as it has upsides. So it's different sides of the same coin.
Good.
Yeah, Jens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's lots have been said. I mean, I just the other week I came across of an experiment which I did myself on. I'm not a programmer at all, and I can do some coding 20 years ago, and I gave an AI the API for software 2 data sets and asked the blunt question, give me the differences between these 2 data sets, which has been a half year's project or something in programming and analyzing and comparing, and it just came up after, I don't know, a couple of minutes with a 3D plot of something. This mind-blowing experiment, as I don't know how telling it is, but for me it's really telling the story that the coding becomes less and less important. It's probably trivial these days, but the skill set I would seek if I would be like 20 or 25 is how to use these engines, right? How to engineer prompting and understand the different models which are out there and follow this evolution or this revolution actually as close as I can, because today, I mean, it's software, right? It's programming, it's summarizing papers, all of that. Tomorrow it will be probably drawing. So someone makes a model or dictates a drawing, then the drawings pops out, which is now a plethora of technical drawers doing all that work. All that, I would try to understand how it goes, but I wouldn't try to do the math. To me, it's similar like in my age. I mean, people were using pocket calculators. You can't use a pocket calculator because you have to do the math and you need to know it, like logarithm, all of that shit. No one even thinks about that today. And to me, it's kind of a similar thing with AI now, right? My generation, and I'm having a hard time to giving advice to someone which is like 20, 30 years younger, right? Because I don't know how the future looks like. But my gut feeling, being asked for that, is this is so key that it can't be underrated. So be fluent in that would be my approach.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You look at sorry to interrupt, but I think it's already happening on the design side. So Agilent's GCMS systems, around 70% of that design work is now done by AI.
Okay.
And I think there's tool sets rapidly appearing that are gonna and like I said, I think you have to embrace it. Fundamentally, I think it's two ways. You could sort of say, you know what, we're going to kind of push back and we don't believe this, or you say, you know what, you need to get. It's too important, I think, that you have to get involved and say, okay, let's work out exactly where it can add benefit and make us more productive. And I don't think it's something to be scared of from an intellectual point of view. I think it has to, not to say that it won't erode some of those jobs, but I think in general, if it actually gives us more time to think and to challenge ourselves, okay, where are the real innovations, say, in imaging, in the imaging world, right? That can only be a good thing.
Maybe to add to that, I think we touched upon AI quite a bit, but in your engineering skills, and Gavin asked the question, where will we be 5 years from now? Instruments are getting better, we're producing more and more data, but our minds are not growing, so we need the new tools to deal with this massive flux of data that we get. So, and it's clear that AI helps us to sort through images, data, text, code. But the most important aspect, I think, is for you guys to stay critical. Yeah. And that's essential, because if you just accept everything what AI sorts for you, then you might get off on the wrong path. I mean, maybe 99% of it is the right path, but if it's the 1% wrong, so be critical. And I think that irrespective of academia or industry, I think being a responsible and ethical scientist, R&D engineer, is to be critical to what you see and teach yourself to test and validate certain things that you read or hear. I think that's one of the most important skills. And if you're that, then it doesn't matter whatever tool you use, whether it's AI or simple reading a paper, also there you just have to be critical, right? So I think that's very important. But using it to sift through these massive amounts of data, that's one of the critical aspects of the engineer 5 years from now.
I agree. How are you all using it at the moment? This is an open conversation, yeah. So
Maybe they don't want to share that with
yeah,
us.
I know.
The way I use it now is as a supportive tool, of course. So if we have to write a report on a lab experiment, then I will use it to, I will tell it about the report, and I will ask to come up with relevant sources, because spending hours on Google Scholar or whatever feels then a bit redundant. But I think what Ron says, it also drives you to be, to really understand the conceptual work of it better. And I think if you have that, then AI is a really nice supportive tool, but I would hate if it ever replaced me. So
But I think it also helps you to get down the core of what you really want to know, or how you want to educate yourself very quickly. So it's also a tool
Absolutely.
in that sense. So you need to use it for that purpose.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for coming again for the like 5th time maybe you are hearing this. So for me, I use AI to explain what we are learning to me, because I think if I'm looking at a presentation or reading a book, if it's not in the words that I understand or the way that I understand, it's really hard to get through it. And since we are in a really niche subject, there are no like YouTube videos to watch to explain this. So AI helps me to understand everything into a deeper level and to make sure that I can maybe explain it to others. So I think that's really helpful to me, at least to like keep going and not feel like, oh, I don't understand anything. So that's what I use it for. Anybody else? No?
Okay, thank you. I think the part of the responsibility is on us as educators as well, right, to teach you how to use these things critically, because I think, as Ron says, it's super important. To use a very colloquial term, we want you to be BS detectors, yeah? We want you to be able to look at information and decipher what is relevant, what is accurate, and what is not. So I don't want the conversation to dominate or to be dominated by artificial intelligence. If we could think about other things that students should be doing now to prepare for that future. So outside of kind of AI, what are the other areas that they really should be focused on?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think we touched on that, right? Are you asking about the soft skills? I mean, we touched on soft skills, problem solving, or I think pretty much we worked on that, right? Or is there any specific aspect in your question?
No, that's okay. I really want the students to reflect on the problem solving side as well, though, because it underpins everything we do. The UM, the students are probably fed up of hearing me talk about PBL and problem solving, and but it really is the foundation of everything we do. So can you give our panel some examples of maybe things you've done in problem solving sessions, problem-based learning tutorials? I know that Ron and I were talking earlier on about you've been very hands-on with certain pieces of instrumentation. These things have been put on Instagram for everyone to see. What kinds of things have you been up to?
Well, we've been up to a large list of things during those PBL sessions. We've gotten cases where we need to find keywords and develop questions ourselves and answer those for ourselves in the way we see them, and compare those answers between students, and we can add to each other or see where our answers differ and so learn from each other. There have also been times we were asked to we learned a type of data analysis during a lecture. Then we had to apply it and just learn for ourselves how to apply it and interpret that type of data analysis. And also things that also relate to, for example, projects, like we worked on a mass spectrometer one time.
Did you guys ever get that to work? Sorry, I shouldn't put you.
Which was also
not the point. Which was also not the purpose.
It was the point for us to learn how it works and to develop a problem-solving skills in a practical sense as well. So that's for me.
Should I elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's a really good idea to elaborate on.
So,
but maybe you need to explain to Jens and Jim a little bit what you exactly did, because I think that's kind of at the core of what problem-based learning is, and it's also research-based learning. And those are exactly the type of real hardcore skills that you take home from this education.
So to put it a bit into perspective, we started this program, all of us have a different background, and the very first subject we had was with Ron on imaging engineering in general. And we had a practical part in that course where we were asked to rebuild an old mass spectrometer that Ron used in the past and put it up to date to so attach an Arduino onto it and then make it do a bit of data processing automatically. And I can remember very vividly in the first lecture, Ron really addressed this point of you will struggle, but just embrace it and use it to your advantages. So I think we got some guidelines and some handbooks. And in theory, it should have just been this screw goes there and this pipe is attached on that output, and then it should have worked within a week. But after 8 weeks, I think 2 components worked half. But that's in the entire idea behind the process. It's just to go out there and struggle, encounter problems, and then the key is on how do you resolve those problems. So I think if we had more time, we would definitely get it working. But I really enjoyed the struggling with these problems.
If you want to ever practice that a little bit more, then you come to our final test experiments and find all the bugs the systems come along from the predecessor manufacturer. So
I would love to.
Maybe Jim, what do you think of that approach? Also for Jens, what do you guys think of that approach? Because literally, we threw these guys in the deep end of the pool. They had all different background. They knew nothing about it. And on day 3, they were with wrenches and vacuum flanges and trying to hook up pumps, plugging in a massive plug into where some people couldn't even reach the plug. I remember that. We had a lot of fun with that. But the point was also to, like you said, make sure that you experience those. And I think you touched upon depth, and I think that's absolutely crucial. But those experiences, I think, need to be combined with the depth. So I'm curious to see how you see that approach, that part of our research-based learning approach.
I would probably come with the first aid kit and stand by. But I love it. I believe when I started my career, this was nothing different. You just jump into the water. You take the time and get it done, right? It's you read a book, someone tells you how it works. All right, you get it done, but you find out yourself. It's priceless from my perception. Still, though, I mean, there's gray shades in that, right? So if I put you in front of a whatever state-of-the-art mass spectrometer, so many parts that you are on a mission impossible. But I like the approach, and I believe there's nothing else which can earth you better than such an experience. Jim?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is how we all learn, right? And there's nothing better than being thrown in to something and said, okay, make this work, and then you get a level of understanding. And I think you also learn not to be fearful of the technology, because some people it can be a little bit intimidating to start with, and yet I think there's nothing better than playing around with it and fundamentally learning and making things work. Yeah, it's fundamental to I think to all of us, and everyone has to go through it.
Thanks. This was this year's new experiment, and I explained that to you guys. But I think it's so important because ultimately we can give you a lot of theory and we can have you do practicals which are very well designed, like you said, like recipes that you follow, but you don't really learn the real exercise and the real needs of what will happen if you're in industry or doing a PhD. You need those problem-solving skills, and you need to be aware that in a career in engineering and imaging engineering, you will encounter those. So what best to experience in the first week of the imaging engineering program, and you're still here, so thumbs up.
On that point, those first few weeks, because I think you can maybe elaborate on this as well. To think about other imaging techniques that you guys have been exposed to, I know that somebody in this room has been putting in an MRI scanner. I believe that you've conducted other analyses on each other using various imaging techniques. Can somebody just discuss how that was? How that was?
So I think that part was really interesting because we also got to work with the machines. And for example, I haven't seen an MRI machine or been to an MRI machine before. So it was interesting to see it from the point of view, let's say, of the patient, but also of the engineer, of somebody working with the machine. For me, it was a perspective into, maybe I would like to do something like this, working with the machines and maybe fixing them, upgrading them, we will see. But I think it was really valuable to be able to try all of the different aspects, all of the different techniques, the instruments, because I think in the first period we were giving this overview of all of it, and we were able to kind of figure out, okay, am I interested in this or in this? And I think it was really, really valuable to not only see a presentation and go with that, but to actually try it, put your hands on the machine. Let's say I think we used the ultrasound, we looked at the arteries, and I think something like that. So there was a lot of practical stuff, which was really, really nice.
So what I enjoyed the most on these was not even the technique itself, but the fact that we work closely with the academic hospital here means that inherently a lot of techniques we do are medically related. And it was so cool to see that we all have a different background. We have people with physics background, biomedical background, biometrics. And just everyone took up information on a different pace and on a different level, and then to within the group exchange this knowledge. So, for example, for me, anything biomedically related was easier to grasp, but for Simona, anything physics related was really easy to grasp. And then working as a group, as like a project group to bring each other up to pace on these topics, that was really fun. So yeah, and I think in that way that reflects a bit also how a project group in a company works, because it would certainly be maybe a bit boring if everyone had a physics background. So yeah, it's really nice to see.
I'm going to
thought everyone was a physicist. That's not a great place to be, is it?
I think this is a nice line of questioning to pursue, because so a lot of what these guys have been doing is group project based work. They're all from an interdisciplinary background, and a kind of foundation of education on the masters as well is to train people who are team players, who are able to work within an interdisciplinary team. How does that look like in industry? I mean, presumably those skills are absolutely vital for success.
I mean, yeah, this is so self-explanatory that I'm having a hard time to speak to it because it's, yeah, I mean, the lonely wolf has zero chance to survive or get anything done. It's all about collaborating, team, and we just touched yesterday on listening. Listening is a widely underrated skill. I mean, just reflect if you're talking to your colleagues and you don't understand each other, reflect when conversation and discussion work. They work when you take the time to really actively listen and understand and follow and ask back questions. And there's no difference, because the work we on the problem solving, all of that is no different in industry essentially, right? So all these skills can't be underrated. So if I'm recruiting, and I'm pretty sure I'm reflecting the vast majority of the industry, is you don't look only on the depths of expertise, which is mandatory, but you really look on the personality, and I think you touched on it before. That's key, right? Because you can't survive otherwise. There may be niches, but I'm hard time to say that where the expertise beats the social skills, but I would always rank it kind of opposite.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and you both hit on this, right, in the kind of questions you've asked there, is fundamentally it's a kind of fundamental principle of working together and building teams with people with different skill sets to solve problems. But the other thing is, it's much more fun when you have people from different backgrounds, as you're finding out, right? Because they look at things slightly differently. And, in fact, Carol Robinson, who does a lot of the nanoelectrospray work, right? One of the most interesting things there was someone came into her group that wasn't encumbered by knowledge of what they'd done previously and tried an experiment that everyone else had dismissed. And that's how she started spraying membranes from nanoelectrospray needles. And she wouldn't have got there if it was someone that come in that hadn't got that kind of slightly different approach, right? And a little bit of naivety to say, well, why didn't we just try this? So I think it's, I think you have a lot of fun when you get teams together that have different skill sets, and it's very rewarding.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So I think we'll close off that section, and that was a nice anecdote to end on there. I want to think a little bit about careers in your own companies. So one of the things we want to talk about is the kind of typical entry level roles that you hire to, and what does the first 2 years look like for a graduate engineer in those roles?
Let Jim go first.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, like a lot of analytical instrument companies and, you know, life science companies, we obviously recruit a lot of people into, and particularly with, as we've discussed, it doesn't have to necessarily be you don't have to have a PhD, you know, it can be a master's qualification, it can be a degree qualification. But we employ a lot of people that are, you know, research scientists, development scientists, application scientists, to Jens's point about, you know, people working in demonstration facilities. So there's a variety of different roles, I would have said, from a science and technology perspective, you know, not if we take out things like pure sales and pure marketing, for example. And what does the first 2 years look like? I think the first kind of 6 months is learning the ropes, being frank about it, learning the systems, learning, you know, everything about how we kind of store information, retrieve information, you know, how would you create a part number, all of that type of stuff, as well as understanding the kind of the core technologies that we have. So you'd generally be mentored when you came into the company. Someone would work with you. You'd work as part of a team. You know, we're quite, like a lot of companies these days, we're quite strict on what we call performance management. So everyone is looked at with regard to their performance over, you know, an annual period of time. But it's not a, you know, it's not really a frightening thing. Like, it's just a healthy thing to say, guess what? We're going to make sure that we say at the beginning of the year we're going to do something, we actually achieve that, and if not, we try and course correct. So the first couple of years, like I say, firstly it's learning, and then it's really, you know, kind of looking at, depending on the role, but you start to get involved into a project and you start to make a contribution to, you know, to the fundamental research and development activities in the company, or the application, you know, activities of the company. And then I would have said after a couple of years, really, depending on what level you've come in at and your qualifications, because like I say, there's a different, you know, we do have different kind of positions for people. Then there's the opportunity to kind of look at that and say, okay, is someone ready for promotion, or do they need to move to a different part of the organization? Because there's a huge number of roles inside the company. And like all of the organizations, right, we're globally distributed. So, you know, we have US offices as well as Central European offices, and those in Asia, Pacific and China.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Yeah. For me, hardly to add anything. It's very much the same in the broker. The mentoring, I think, is the key thing. I experience that people are kind of scared. Oh God, someone expects something from me. How do I get that done? This is anticipated, and you're guided. You're integrated in a team. So hardly anything to add from that end.
Okay. What about you guys? Who's not headed for a PhD? So where we've kind of spoken about your career. Maybe what about your career plans?
Well, that is a good question. If you have any tips, let me know. It's nice to hear that there is a pathway of learning also during careers, because for me, I like learning. I love learning new things. So knowing, even starting in a new company, learning everything, I think for some people those few months might be hard, learning everything new, but for me it's like, yes, nice, I like this. But I actually don't know what my career holds. I also don't know what my internship is going to be in, and that's, well, the time is ticking, so
Tick-tock.
yes, exactly. But I don't know, maybe I would like to go to industry, maybe I would like to work at a hospital. I really don't know what I'm so far leaning towards. It might be a bit more medical, but I don't know. A PhD to me sounds like not a good idea for some reason. I'm really not leaning towards that. And as you mentioned, it's a nice set of skills that you can get from it, but it's not necessary to do what you like, to achieve big things. So it was also nice to hear that even if I'm not drawn to a PhD, it doesn't mean like I will just, I don't know, not find a job at all or something like that.
So let me ask you, Simona, what do you think drives the ultimate decision you're going to make? What is the key ingredient that will drive you to a certain decision, direction?
Good question. So far, I'm leaning towards where it's going to be, where my job is going to be, and whether I decide to do a PhD or not. It will be again about how my internship goes. If I find something that I really enjoy, or maybe not that much, or if I figure out, okay, I really don't want to do this. If I find maybe directly a position in industry that I can do that really interests me. So I think there are more factors to this than just one, but these are probably the most important ones.
What would you? I mean, question to all of the audience: What is a satisfying job for you? What do you need really from you? You go home in the evening. What makes you smile when you go home? What is fun? What is not fun? Are you clear on that?
If I may continue, I think it's something that you get home. You have time for being at home, for relaxing. You don't need to think about it all the time, and that you are not exhausted when you come home. So, for example, a job that you enjoy and really makes you happy, you go home and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go there tomorrow and I'm gonna enjoy it, and not going home and be like, oh no, I have to go there tomorrow. And for me, what I find fulfilling is when I can help somebody else, for example. So I tutor in my a part-time job. So what fulfills me there is that my student tells me, oh yeah, I scored A on the exam, or yes, I actually understand what you just told me, getting the feedback that my work matters in the sense. So I guess being appreciated at work is, I think, really big thing.
Other ideas?
Yeah, for me, what's also regarding in a sense is also, of course, doing a job that you love, as Simone mentioned, and being also for me being passionate about it. Really, for me, doing it more about the work and the thing you're doing than other people who do a job just for the money, but really doing it for your personal passion. And for me also, I would really like to contribute to things, to research or other things, and know that I'm also making a meaningful contribution to, for example, to research or another aspect. That's what for me drives me, essentially.
Impact, yeah.
Anyone else? Do you want to come to you?
I like knowledge and learning, so I want to be a specialist. Doesn't really matter really where, but I hope I find myself there one day.
So continuous growth is what the key word is. Yeah.
Yeah, and just on that point, I think it's a really interesting point that, you know, a lot of people, you know, thinking about career development, a lot of people look to the university or the company they're in to sort of develop them, per se, right? And they expect that things are going to get, you know, I have a lot of career discussions here with people, and 99% of career development comes down to the individual. So if you want to do something, if you want to better yourself, if you want to learn, most institutes or most companies will certainly here, we support a lot of people, you know, if they want to do a further education, an MBA, or if they want to kind of, you know, we've sponsored people that don't have PhDs to do PhDs through industry here as well. So I think there's a lot of, but you've got to have that desire to do it yourself. You know, the company or organizations can't do that for you.
Very true.
Okay, I think we've made our way through a lot of the stuff that we had on the agenda. I'm going to put the question back to you guys. This is like your final opportunity to ask any questions to this panel. Do you have anything else you want to discuss?
So this is less from a career perspective, but more out of pure curiosity. So we have here representatives of Broeker and Waters. I think on paper that could seem like rivalries, but how would these intra-company relations, how are they? Do you also collaborate or?
Between the companies?
Yeah.
Hardly. I mean, we're competing. So I believe, I mean, it wouldn't be even appropriate if companies say they can't do things for, you know, market reasons and all of that. at the same time, my view on this competition is it's very healthy. A technology which is run by only one organization is doomed to fail because there is no drive, no motivation, and so the competition, as far as I experienced it, there's good, better, and worse examples, but overall, I would say it's a scientific, good competition. I'm not in sales, so I'm a little bit more on the easy end on it, because there's no one winner in sales. But on the research on driving a technology, driving imaging, for example, I believe it's very healthy. You have more than one player in that. Yeah, but no, it's not that I'm sitting with something and we kind of discuss what to do next. No. Hardly. I mean, there is examples in the past. For example, Bruker collaborated with Agilent. They combined forces, right? We got sources from Agilent, and they got traps from us, and all the way. But this exception rather than the mainstream.
Yeah. But I mean, there must be a healthy rivalry always, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think to Jens's point, it's not. I think it drives technology development. So the fact that there is more than one company that makes technology is a good thing, right? Because they're constantly looking to how to compete. Whereas I think if you're the only player in a specific market, you become, fat and lazy, right? Yeah. You don't kind of think, you don't push yourself to develop it as much as you should do. And therefore, who loses out? Fundamentally kind of science loses out, right? And the end user. So I think that's one thing. I would say on the software side, there's more interoperability between companies. So I think there's a lot more kind of integration of different technologies from a software perspective than perhaps there used to be. But there's a healthy competition now, I would say. Yeah.
Maybe I can add to something to this, the two remarks. As an outsider, I also see something different. Yes, there's healthy competition as far as instrumentation is concerned, but they also have a lot of common interests, and then they really collaborate. I mean, Bruker, Waters, Thermo, MS Vision, Demcon, they're all on the advisory board of your educational program, because they also see the need to keep an eye out and be in touch with what is going on and how their next generation of employees is educated. And that's more of a global issue, I think, that I think where you guys find each other. And on a personal level, I attend a lot of conferences where both these gentlemen and their colleagues meet. It's really very collegial. Of course, they don't share lots of things, but it's not like that. It's they because you're at company X, you don't like company Y. Not at all like that. So it's really a very interesting field to see how, particularly people that are in R&D or R&T, or research and technology, how they actually interact, because they all, like Ida says, want to learn from each other. At least that's from what I see.
Perfect summary. ASMS is kind of the example where all that happens. I don't know who attended an ASMS, but there's these big hospitality suites in the evening, and you go to every competition and you have beers and all of that and chit chat. So it's more I wouldn't say a family, but it's closer to that than to I really have the knives out or something.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question for both of you. How did you get into the job you're currently in? Because of course it's not for everyone, has a different path throughout their life and how they're going through academics, etc., into industry. How does that path look like for you two, and are there anything you look into for the future?
Oh, you're dodging that bullet, Jens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was doing a PhD in biological mass spectrometry, so at the time electrospray was fairly new, and so was MALDI, and I was doing a PhD on mass, in the mass spectrometry area. Actually, I was a biochemist by training, so I was starting to use it as a new technique. And when I finished my PhD, I kind of decided that I really didn't want to stay in academia. I wanted to get into industry. So, I got a job initially in the applications lab, actually, to Jens's point, running samples and working with a lot of customers, which was really good because it taught you about the breadth of application that mass spectrometry has, right? And the analytical sciences industry has a huge breadth of applications, everything from sort of clinical diagnostics all the way through to kind of obviously life science research, drug testing, camel doping, testing for camels being doped and all sorts of really, sports applications. So it's really, really fascinating. And I think, one of the challenges once you've, I think, been in an instrument company sort of 18 months, you either leave after 18 months or you're probably here for a long time. That's my sort of take on it. So yeah, I think it's a great area to get into. Frankly, I think whether it's in industry or academia, I think to Ron's earlier point, everyone's pretty collegiate, and there's a lot of good communication and camaraderie across the whole mass spectrometry discipline. I think, especially imaging, I would say, which is slightly smaller, but I think there's a really good community around it.
Yeah, my career is a little bit, kind of different, because I made I had my master's or my diploma in laser physics. So I made something which touches to MALDI, but the CW laser is not exactly suited for imaging. And then I got touched with a pump probe femtosecond experiment in my PhD work, very exotic. And so the relation to Bruker, it's a while ago, was then, all right, this guy has some idea about laser optics, and he built a reflectron mass spectrometer in his PhD work, and then made some exotic stuff. And the general manager at that point in time said, that's two ticks, right? Hire him. So and I was initially I was recruited to do some infrared spectroscopy, where I had no freaking clue. And then eventually I really, I was thrown into a group under my former boss, who did a lot of the imaging stuff, and I just learned by him, right? And then I learned on the job. I learned electronics, all of that on the job, and then eventually I kind of, made my role, as I said, initially into, from you make a module working, the XY stage or something. This is what first thing I did, and then, all right, there's a stage, there's a mass spectrum. Okay, make the mass spectrum. There's electronics, there's software needed, all of that, and you grow in your area, and then eventually, if you're making a good job, people realize you're making a good job, and then you're up for more, right? That's kind of how it goes. And, yeah.
Thank you for your answer.
Welcome.
I have maybe one closing question.
Yeah.
Closing question.
For me, no, on the section. I think both of you had a really nice privilege in the sense that you were there when all these techniques were first introduced, and you saw the development over the past maybe 30 years or so.
Thanks for reminding us.
You're very welcome. Where does it end, do you think? I mean, we are making big steps in getting higher resolving power, higher resolutions. For example, with microscopy, we can surpass the theoretical maximum resolution, but where is the end? Should we worry about in 30, 40 years?
Well,
we got to the limit, or?
I mean, I looking in, you can only answer that looking in the history. And if you look on the people before quantum mechanics, they said, all right, we understand it all. So, and then quantum mechanics came, right? So no, it will never stop. I mean, it will never stop. And this is kind of the philosophic part of it. The more practical part is, and this is a perception where different people may different things. My perception is on this imaging field. It needs to really cross a chasm, and we were discussing actually that this is today. It has to bridge a chasm to meaningful application space. A lot of that is still in academia. Is proof of concept, and it's been for 1 or 2 decades in that area. It makes progress, but eventually I believe the big breakthrough is really when you may have known the biotyper or this microbiology application. This is kind of the blueprint for me where I want to see imaging, and pretty much all the companies want to see imaging, because then it makes an impact to society, because eventually then really it answers the question. Right now it's, in my very critical attitude, it's still very academic. But Ron has a different perception, and that's fair enough. Yeah, but to answer the question, I don't see an end, and who knows what's around the corner. AI, we just touched. God knows what AI will make for pattern recognition and the spectral interpretation. That is all to be seen. Honestly, I would, if I hear a little bit of it's all invented, there's nothing new coming. I mean, I had the same feeling when I started my career, and then I would rather look at it the opposite way. You are starting at a point in time when AI begins to mature. And not bringing up the discussion again, but I think there's a lot of things which go better every freaking day.
And to that point, Jens, I think also what we see is a lot of things that were not possible maybe 20, 30 years ago, all of a sudden with the technologies today are possible. So concepts that were maybe slightly older and were thought of now with these new technologies and in these new concepts will make that translation to meaningful applications much quicker, and that's up to you guys, and we're not going to do that anymore. You guys need to do that.
Yeah, I'd also have to say I think the kind of opportunity for the technologies is huge, and it, you know, despite the fact, I think you're absolutely right. If you think back 30, 40 years ago, there was a lot of fundamental developments and kind of innovations, right, which were coming to market, which has, and if you look throughout that time, there's been a lot of, you know, really big advances from a technology point of view. Perhaps what there hasn't been, even though, you know, we kind of feel, okay, it's grown and the community's a lot bigger, but not compared to the community that really there should be, I think, of the technology per se. So I think the next, you know, kind of, it's always difficult to predict the future, but I think there will be a mass deployment of technology like this, right, into more routine environments, and that's, you know, that should be good for all of us.
That's a very comforting answer. Yeah.
You won't be out of a job, no, don't worry.
Okay, so I think we're at that point where we start to think about concluding. Okay, I want you to cast your minds back to when you were students, and I have a closing question for you. So if you were in this room again as a master's student, what would you do in the next 12 months? So really thinking about the next 12 months of education. So I don't know who wants to open with.
Okay, if I was a master's student, I'll start and give these gentlemen some time to think. If I would be a master's student right now, I would really start vibe coding and teaching myself how to use these new models to sift through my own ideas. Like you guys, everybody has so many ideas. You know, trying to use AI, put them into context. I think that would be something. And I know it's what we a little bit discussed over lunch as well, that we see all these models going so fast and we have amazing set of skills, but those are new skills that I've never been trained in. So if I would be a master student now, I would pick up those new and upcoming skills and make them my own.
Yeah, I think I would sort of echo that to an extent of saying that skills outside your core discipline, because you never know kind of quite what you're interested in until you start to investigate slightly other areas. So, you know, I think that area that Ron's just mentioned is obviously very hot at the moment. So not having some skills there, or at least a rudimentary understanding of it, is probably you know, kind of a bit of a warning sign. So I think it would be definitely good to get that. But I think any other skills and things that you enjoy doing, just investigate that. And our bottom line is find something that you enjoy. I hate to say it, right, but which is always difficult to kind of do, right? It's easier to say, but if you enjoy what you do, you spend a lot of time at work, and you know, it becomes a massive part of your life. So yeah, just enjoy it and have fun.
Yeah, hard to add anything. I'm probably circling back to my initial one. If I look on my environment, I'm looking who's really successful and enjoying and living what has been said. It's these people who really understand their stuff and live it and become domain experts and all of that. This is makes their life easy, makes them successful. So if you're it's a little bit of a specialization, but if you're someone who understands ion optics inside out, I mean, this is just priceless, and I don't know how much it will change it. Or if you're an electronics engineering person who really know how to tweak things, I think there's always a place for such expertise, which hardly can be replaced. And so the innovation part and the specialism is a safe bet, I believe, in any career almost. Unless you want to become a manager and deal with budgets and and all of that.
Okay. So thank you to you guys for engaging with the process. A huge thank you to to all three of you. You're all extremely busy. Jim, Jens, Ron, we really appreciate the time that you've given us to come and discuss with us this afternoon. We really do. We are very, very grateful. So thank you. Maybe we give them a round of applause.
It's been very interesting. Yeah. Thanks for the good questions.
All right. Good. Super. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks
you
for
guys.
having
It
us,
was
yeah?
really,
Thanks
really
all.
appreciated. Thanks for the interaction. Thanks a lot, Jim, for doing
No
this
problem.
as well.
Take care. See you
Hope
soon.
to see you soon.
Yeah, will do. Take care.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Goodbye.
And thanks a lot, Jens.